Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today morning, we'll continue our discussion on the topic of when life hurts, how to respond to it. The Srimad Bhagavatam describes the process of bhakti, especially as it is practiced by characters who were in situations of extreme crisis. That is itself the driving narrative. The central narrative of the Bhagavatam is the narrative of Parikshit Maharaj when he is about to face death. And if we look at most of the stories in the Bhagavatam, they are describing this theme of death. We see the story of Gajendra. Let's look at the stories where death is something which happens, or death is something which is somebody is very close to. So Gajendra faces a life-threatening crisis. Prahlad is tortured and threatened to be killed, murdered. We have this is the 7th and 8th cantos. If you look back, the 6th canto has Vritrasur, who actually dies on the war field. And if you look at the stories of Dhruva and Dhruva and Pruthu, they are stories of heroic living. But if you look at the thrust of the Bhagavatam, there is not much glorification or celebration described when Dhruva gains the kingdom. If you look at the tone of the Bhagavatam itself, it stresses when eventually Dhruva goes back. Dhruva Maharaj goes back to Vaikuntha, when the Vaikuntha airplanes come. That is the place where the Bhagavatam is in a celebratory, glorious mood. This is how wonderful it is. Yes, so the Bhagavatam does talk about how Dhruva, by worshipping Vishnu, gets the kingdom. But that's not a stress. Even similarly with Pruthu Maharaj also, the stress is on how he eventually attains a perfect departure from the world. There is elaborate his life, his instructions, his encounter with the earth when she is not providing resources, all that are described. But the overall thrust of the Bhagavatam is that how one departs from the world. And if we consider Dhruva, even before that, the challenge he faces is of extreme dishonor. And Dhruva is a Kshatriya. So although he's a young boy, still there's a Kshatriya blood within him. So for a Kshatriya, Sambhavitasa Chakirtir Maranadatirichyate. Dishonor is worse than death. So Dhruva also faces something like death when he's dishonored. And that's why he feels his present life, the life that he was going through at that time, unbearable. And thus, he leaves that life. So this mood of facing extreme crisis and how one turns towards devotion at that time, that is a consistent theme within the Bhagavatam. And while talking about this, today I'll talk about the Gajendra pastime, and to some extent I'll contrast it with the Vritrasur pastime. I talked about in the first session that when life hurts, it may be because we make a small mistake, and somehow circumstantially the mistake gets exaggerated by others, or it gets exacerbated by the circumstances themselves. And we face serious problems because of that. Now sometimes it may be that there is hardly any mistake from our part. It is that some people are on a mission to destroy us, to hurt us. So when that happens, at that time it is very easy to reduce our world to our attacker, to somebody who is attacking us. The theme of the Bhagavatam is that we need to expand our consciousness. So we expand our consciousness ultimately towards Krishna. However, what attachments do is that attachments constrict our consciousness. Every single thing that we get attached to, our consciousness gets fixed in that, gets, we could say, even trapped in that. We can, whatever is our attachment, that attachment becomes the filter through which we experience the rest of reality. So, if somebody is very attached to money, then every single thing that happens to them, single thing that happens in the world, they'll see it all through the filter of money. So, there are various poignant quotes or anecdotes about how people can be so money-minded. Once there was a village in which suddenly the dam broke down. So there was a very stingy money lender over there. So when he heard, villagers came running and said, "Oh, the dam has broken down." So his first question was, is that good for money lending or is that bad for money lending? So here, the consciousness can become so restricted, it's a disaster around. People are dying, but they think only in terms of, is it good for me or is it bad for me? Well, not just for me, but for the thing that I am attached to. I remember once in, I think in 1992 or something, there's a series of bomb blasts in Mumbai. And it was like 23 or 24 bomb blasts, one after another. It was huge. And at that time, one of my friends, I was not introduced to Bhakti at that time. So one of my friends was heavily mad for cricket. I was also very interested in cricket, but he was mad. And so I remember when the bomb blast happened, it was shocking news. And his reaction was, because of this bomb blast, India-Pakistan cricket match was cancelled. So, I was jolted by that. What are you talking about? So many people have died. He says, yeah, that's okay, but these matches are so exciting, they cancelled those matches. So, it's not that he was a normally insensitive person, but at that point, when the attachment gets caught in something, then we experience all of reality only through the filter of those attachments. So, if say right now I'm looking at the world, I'm looking at this room. So I can look in all directions and I can see the room and observe it. But if in front of me there is some kind of a mask, which is only a small hole in front of it, then I can see it only through that hole. So only what that hole shows, that's what I see. So similarly in attachments, they constrict our vision. And when the vision is constricted, then we can see only through as it is said, the tunnel vision. The tunnel vision of what how whatever is happening is going to affect the object of our attachment. And the Bhagavatam's purpose is to get us to expand our consciousness so that we think not in terms of our attachment, but in terms of Krishna and his service. And our growth towards Krishna. Now, the object of attachment for some people may be small, the object of attachment may be big. That is variable. But ultimately, if it is anything other than Krishna, it becomes the cause of illusion and tribulation. It becomes any attachment to anything other than Krishna, it becomes the cause of illusion, because we don't get a proper perspective of reality. And eventually, that attached thing, that whatever we are attached to, that's going to go away from us. So it becomes the cause of tribulation. Now, in the Gajendra story, the Bhagavatam depicts that Gajendra was like a typical powerful king. In fact, the whole of the Bhagavatam is describing the story of characters mostly who are kings. Vamshavtar, Vamshavali. The genealogy is a significant part of the Bhagavatam. The idea is, for most people, sages are models for reverence, but they are not models for emulation. Most people think, yes, sages are wonderful people, and I want their blessings, but I don't really want to become like them. It's too difficult. It's too otherworldly. So kings and royalty is what everybody is attracted by. So the Bhagavatam describes primarily the lives of royalty, of kings, and how they went from their royalty towards their spirituality. When it describes the story of Gajendra, he is not a human being, but he still has human-like consciousness. And jajapa paramam japyam pragjanmanyanushikshitam. It described that based on what he had practiced in his previous life, that memory carried on to him. And when he was in his crisis, the prayers that he offers are not just prayers with a person human consciousness, but it's actually advanced human consciousness. So, generally, when we practice bhakti, whatever we practice creates impressions within us. And those impressions go with us from this life to the next life. And generally, if we consider what is it that actually distinguishes human beings from other animals, or a spiritually advanced human being from a less spiritually advanced human being. Actually, we all have a body, we all have a mind, we all have a soul. Animals also have souls. So in animal body, where is the difference? Why is it the soul in the animal body is not able to perceive spirituality, where the soul is able to perceive spirituality in a human body? The difference is not so much in the physical form. The physical form is simply a channel. The physical form normally limits the consciousness. The modern science holds that consciousness is produced by the brain, and by ultimately the body. However, the scriptural understanding is, far from being produced by the brain, the body, consciousness is limited by the brain and the body. Consciousness is able to perceive many, many things. But based on the kind of body that we are in, our consciousness gets directed towards certain things. So if a soul is in a human body, or a soul is in a, say, a elephant's body or a dog's body, then the soul's consciousness will look for ahara, nidra, bhayamaithun, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, in terms of what is suitable for that body. And in that way, the consciousness, which could be conscious of so many things, its consciousness gets limited by the body. And then this limitation is less in the human body than in the animal body. In the human body, we are limited, but there is the potential for spiritual inquiry. In general, we can say in life we have the how question and the why question. How question is, okay, how do I get food? How do I get security? How do I perpetuate myself? How do I do things in life? So the how question is what drives all living beings. But the why question is what human beings are capable of asking. Now, why should I eat? How do I survive? That's a question which all living beings ask. But why should I survive? What is the point of living? That question, most species don't ask that. So, there is protecting one's existence or perpetuating one's existence, and there is questioning the purpose of one's existence. So all of us, just by being in the body, we can say we are given certain purposes. Just by being in a body, we feel hunger, we feel thirst, and we have to find food, we have to find water. So these are purposes which are bodily driven. And most of our life goes in fulfilling these purposes. But is there some purpose bigger beyond this? What is the point? Okay, I find food, I find shelter, I make relationships, but what is the point of it all ultimately? So that question human beings are capable of asking. So when the soul comes to a human body, we could say to some extent the identification with the body is a little lesser. It is always there, but for the soul in the animal body, its whole consciousness is so caught in the body that it can't think of anything beyond the bodily drives. That's all that there is. But in the human species, we can think of something more than just the bodily drives. Prabhupada gives the example that when animals, most species, they have to mate, as soon as it's the mating season and as soon as they see an attractive potential mate, they unite. In humans also, that attraction is there, but there are other factors to consider. In every culture, there's some kind of religion, some system of marriage, some system of sustainable relationships. So, that urge is there, but we can think of things beyond that urge also. Generally, say, very few animals they will not, no animal, say for example, today is Ekadashi. So if a cat sees a mouse, the cat can't think, oh, today is Ekadashi, I should fast. It just doesn't have that capacity. If it's hungry, it will just be driven by the body and it will drink. It will pounce on the mouse and eat it. So for us, although we have bodily drives, we can resist those bodily drives. At least we can question those bodily drives. Do I want to fulfill them? And do I want to fulfill them in this way or that way? Or maybe I just don't need to fulfill them right now. So this capacity, so the how question is impelled by the body. But the why question is impelled by something beyond the body. Why do I exist at all? And it's the why question that will take us towards spiritual understanding and spiritual growth. So when a soul is an animal body, normally it's not capable of asking this why question. However, there is an exception. The souls in animal bodies can't start practicing spiritual life. But if that soul has already practiced spiritual life in a human body earlier, then that spirituality is carried on to the next body. So we sometimes say that if somebody has taken prasad even once, they will never get an animal body. Somebody's practiced a little bhakti. Swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. The Bhagavad Gita 2.40 says. But in the Bhagavatam has the examples of Bharat Maharaj. He became a deer. So the idea is, sometimes there are different rules, different principles or different laws of nature which will work. So at the material level, whatever we are attached to, that's what we are going to get eventually. So we will get that destination. Bharat Maharaj was attached to a deer, so he got a deer's body. But at the same time, because he had practiced bhakti elaborately, so he didn't lose that. He got, at a material level, as per the law of nature, he got a deer's body. But at the spiritual level, the law that whatever spirituality we practice that is never lost to us, that also acted. And how did that act? He got a deer body, but not a deer's consciousness. His consciousness was very human. And like a serious human being, he was not just searching for grass in the forest as a deer, but he was trying to associate with the sages, hear the chanting of mantras, hear their wisdom, and grow spiritually. In the case of Gajendra, however, he had been a king. He had also been a religious person, a pious person, a devoted person, but he had been incidentally cursed by a sage. So because of that, he had lost his human body. He had got an animal body. So he had been told to become like a deer. He had once been doing some prayer, meditation, and a sage came and he noticed the sage. So the sage felt that he's intentionally disrespecting me, and the sage cursed him that you are insensitive, insentient, or you are insensitive, you're not aware, you're not conscious of your situation, so become like a dumb animal, become like an elephant. Now when this happened, he got an animal's body, but he did not get animal's consciousness. He still had human consciousness. However, the spirituality that we acquire in one life, it may manifest at different times in the next life. Krishna says, Purvabhyasena tenaiva riyate yavashopi saha. Purvabhyas, whatever practice we have done in the past, by that, helplessly will be attracted towards spiritual principles. Avashopi saha. So this will happen, but when it will happen will vary from person to person. Even the most spiritual child is not born with a bead bag in his hands. Isn't it? So a child will be born the way the normal child is born, but the attraction towards spirituality may manifest right from early childhood itself. That, like musical instrument, like Bhagavatam recitation, like whatever, like some kirtans. We have Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would cry, and only when Hare Krishna mantra would be sung, he would stop crying. Otherwise, he would keep crying. So, his spirituality was manifested even through his infancy. But in many cases, the spirituality may not manifest immediately. It may require a particular life crisis. We normally just go along with the life that we have been brought up with. So that's why if somebody has made a lot of spiritual advancement, Krishna says they will be born in a family of devotees. Athava yoginameva kule bhavati dhimatam etad vidurlabtaram loke janmed idrusham. If somebody has practiced a lot of bhakti, a lot of spirituality, then they are born in a spiritual family. And by that what happens? This life's momentum works in sync with the previous life's momentum. The previous life, by their practice of spirituality, they acquired some spiritual momentum. And in this life, also, they get a situation where their spiritual momentum is further increased. But if somebody is born in a non-devotee family or a materialist family, the previous life's impressions are there. And that also creates a momentum. But this life's momentum works against that. And when it works against that, then it may require some situation for the previous life's momentum to break through the situations that are there in this life. I wrote a book on reincarnation, demystifying reincarnation, where I gave almost 20-25 cases, very graphic with vivid evidences of children who remember their past lives. After I wrote that book, I decided to do some further research to find out what was the effect of recollecting the past lives on these children in this life. When I wrote the book, my thrust was that their recollections were accurate, and therefore it proves the validity of, or it at least persuasively points towards the validity of reincarnation. But I wanted to check what is the effect on these kids themselves of having remembered a previous life. And I found surprisingly, it didn't make much difference for any of them. None of them became any more spiritual by that. They were just okay. They maintained some contact with their previous life's families. But over a period of time, they went on with this life's family. And Ian Stevenson met some of them after 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, when they went there, well into this life. And he found that for many of them, the memories of her past life were quite remote. Quite remote. They had an understanding that, okay, there's something spiritual about us, but the focus was on practicing, on just continuing getting on with their life in this life at a material level. So it is not that recollection of the specifics of a previous life will necessarily lead to spiritual growth in this life. Sometimes if I feel that if I really understood that I am not the body, I am the soul, then I could practice spiritual life more seriously. It can be, but it need not be. Our spiritual growth depends not so much on our past recollections of our previous lives, it depends on our present intentions. And our present intentions for shaping them, the past recollections, is just one factor. The reason why I am talking about this is that when we say that the spirituality is carried on from one life to another life, what exactly is carried on? Is it specific memories? Say, if a person has practiced bhakti in a previous life, and they are born in a devotee's family, is it that the devotee's child will remember, oh, I was living there at that time and I was practicing bhakti over there? Those specific recollections, when they come, they are usually a result of some peculiar karma. Most often these recollections of past lives come when death happens as a very sudden event. And so maybe some bullet wound or some fatal accident. When usually death is very sudden, premature, unexpected, that time the soul leaves the body, but the soul is not able to process the event of death. And just like if we suddenly fly from, say, India to America, there is a jet lag. The body still seems to be functioning its biological cycles as if we were in India. So we could say that when the soul suddenly leaves one body and goes to another body, there is a body lag. So some souls may remember their past lives. Now, just like with respect to jet lag, some people, their jet lag goes on for a week or two. For some people, they just hit the ground running. And they don't seem to be jet lagged at all. That varies from person to person. So like that, some people, their souls may still remember their life in the previous body, soul with the mind around it. But for some, they may not. So what is carried on from one lifetime to another is not exactly the specific recollections. It is more the overall disposition. We may not remember, oh, I had gone to this temple and I had worshipped these deities. I had gone to this holy place and I had done this worship. What we'll remember is that, oh, there is something more to life. An overall disposition. There's something more to explore in life. And then when we get connected with Krishna, it's not that we may remember consciously, oh, I had worshipped Krishna in a previous life. But what we'll feel is, this is what I am meant to do. This is where I am meant to be. I met many devotees across the world who have started practicing bhakti, although their backgrounds were entirely different in the past. And all of them have their interesting experiences. Some of them say this, just when we just came to a temple, when we saw the deities, when we heard the kirtan, it felt like we were coming home. There's a feeling called deja vu people get. Oh, I was here earlier. Now when people get this feeling, it's not that they can consciously recollect, when was I there? They can't recollect that. But there's this feeling, I have come home. This is where I am meant to be. So that helps a person to take up spiritual life rapidly. So in this life, when this will happen, that will vary. For some, it may be right from birth. For some, it may be their upbringing will help them. So this life's momentum will work in tandem with their previous life's momentum. But in some cases, this life's momentum will work radically opposed to the previous life's momentum. So this is what happened to Gajendra. Gajendra had been a king in a previous life, Maharaj Indradumna. He had been a virtuous, pious, devoted king. But because of his curse, he became a king in an animal species. And in that animal species, he had no recollection of anything spiritual at a conscious level. He was a powerful elephant. He was ruling his herd with an iron hand. And he had his queens, he had his she elephants, he had baby elephants. And he was living a luxurious life, we could say. In terms of, if you want to define luxuries for animals. So, nowadays, of course, people have luxuries for dogs also. They keep a pet dog and, oh, this is a comfortable winter coat for my dog. So like that, there can be luxury. So in terms of animal kingdom, he was having luxury. He was drinking the animal equivalent of, you could say, high quality wine. He was drinking the sap from the trees, most delicious sap, and he was intoxicated by that. And while being like this, he just decided to go to the nearby river. It was not just for quenching his thirst, he also just wanted to enjoy over there. As Gajendra was going along, if we look at the initial description, in the Bhagavatam, there are specific descriptions and there are generic intentions or purposes of the description. The specific description, if we get too caught in it sometimes, we may miss out on the overall intention. The specific description, you say, it may describe this mountain was so big, the Trikuta mountain was huge in its dimensions, and it was, Gajendra, later on it will describe that he fought with the crocodile for such a long time. Now these dimensions, there's a purpose for telling them. It's not so much what the specific dimension is, it's what the point is. The point is that Gajendra had huge amount of territory to enjoy, he had huge luxury, and he was enjoying life. So sometimes people may find it difficult to accept certain specific descriptions in the Bhagavatam. So if that is happening, we don't have to necessarily make that into a major faith issue. The important thing is, what is the purpose of telling that pastime? Say in the 6th canto, there is an astronomical number of wives that are described that Maharaj Chitraketu had. And now 10 million wives it is said. That now the question may come that, how did he have so many wives? So now he was a king and kings could have large number of wives, but in Krishna had 16,000 queens. So many. So now the point over there is that Prabhupada in one purport uses, he had hundreds and thousands of wives, but still he couldn't beget a child. Prabhupada doesn't use the word hundreds of thousands. It's not a multiple, 100,000. The point is not the specific number. The point is, he was trying everything possible to get a child, but he was not able to get a child. So, we have to focus on the point. And the essential point, how much is that changed, whether somebody takes the number literally or somebody takes that number indicatively. We are not saying that it is not literal, but what I am saying is that we don't have to insist on its literality for people, because unless people accept the inconceivable potency of Krishna, it becomes very difficult for them to accept things which the dimensions seem astronomical. So when we are sharing bhakti with others, we have to focus on that which people can have faith in. And by that, as their faith grows, then whatever they can't have faith in, they will be able to explore that a little bit with more open-mindedness. When we say there's an offense to instruct faithless people about the glories of the holy name, that the essence of that offense is not that we don't speak about chanting Hare Krishna to new people. It is that we don't speak about such glories which people may not find it very easy to accept. So, if somebody is coming to a temple, and the temple is high up on a mountain. Now, if they come to a temple and they find, to get to the temple, there is no straight path. It's like, and they're not even steps which you can normally climb. They're like giant steps which you have to use your hands to climb up. It's like mountain climbing. Then some people will persevere, but many will not. So if they have to take huge steps to rise to the way to come to the temple, they may not come. So similarly, if we want people to come towards Krishna, if we provide them a path which is like climbing up a mountain, then they have to take huge leaps of faith at every step. And say, I don't want to do this. Why should I do this? But if from where they are, one step, we help them grow, then they can actually take those steps gradually, one step, and eventually they will rise to the same height as somebody else has risen. But they came there by gradual incremental growth, not by sudden leaps of faith. So to speak things which people will find unbelievable, that is not a sign of our faithfulness. That is a sign of our missing the point of speaking. Prabhupada in the 9th chapter of the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam states that this describes how 9-10 chapters, not 9 chapter, actually 11th chapter, describes how Krishna goes from Hastinapur to Dwarka, and then the path is described. Krishna went from this city to this city, this city, he took the path. And Prabhupada writes in the purport that geologists may try to find the exact path that Krishna took. He said that is a difficult task because, I'm paraphrasing here, that the surface of the earth keeps changing. And he says, as far as we are concerned, we are simply satisfied that Krishna has reached Dwarka and is going to continue his pastimes with his devotees. That is the thrust. So the thrust is that we want to focus on the principle of reciprocating love with Krishna, of taking shelter of Krishna. So both the dimensions of the hugeness of the Trikuta mountain and the dimension of the long nature of Gajendra's struggle thereafter, both of them are meant to highlight this point, and he was so prosperous and he was so powerful. But still, eventually he had to take shelter. And he took shelter of Krishna. Now when this danger came upon him, at that time, he was in the lake, he was bathing, squirting his family with water through his trunk, just having a great time. And then, suddenly he found himself something catching him. And he looked and he saw it was a crocodile. And he thought, this crocodile, what can it do? He just tossed it off. And when he tossed it off, he expected the crocodile will fly away. But this crocodile held on. I think Oscar Wilde, he said that sometimes we have some habits, we think I can just give them up easily. So he said, Oscar Wilde said, giving up smoking is the easiest thing in the world. I have done it over 100 times. So it's like, suppose that crocodile is catching us and we hurl it away. And as we are hurling it away, for a few moments it appears as if its jaws have let go. And I think, hey, the crocodile is gone. And then bring the foot down and again, hey, it's come back. So for us, our conditionings catch us like Gajendra's crocodile's caught. The crocodile caught him. And now for us, our conditionings may not be life-threatening immediately. For him, for Gajendra, the crocodile was life-threatening. And this can actually, we can get difficulties because of our conditionings internally, or even because of our conditions externally. Both ways, either the conditions may hold on to us like a crocodile, or the conditionings may hold on to us like a crocodile. Conditions means that, as I said earlier, somebody might just seem to be on a mission to destroy us. We may try to explain, we may try to clarify, we may apologize, but that person just seems to not let go of it at all. They hold on like Gajendra. Then some people are very unforgiving. Of course, whenever there is a conflict, we only get to see our side of the story. So they may perceive as negative in some way also. But some people, okay, this happened, but let's move forward in life. They just can't, they just don't want to move forward, just hold on to it. So at that time, we may think initially, this is not a big problem, I just deal with it. So Gajendra nonchalantly just moved his foot and he expected that the crocodile will just fly away. But the crocodile held on. And he tried to fight again, tried to push it away, but he just couldn't. In the animal world, the struggle for existence is quite brutal. Prabhupada writes in his Ishopanishad purport that he uses the word the economic necessities. So the economic necessities of animals are as important for them as they are for us. Their economic necessity is not in terms of money, But money is just a tool for us to get our arrangements for food, clothing, shelter, other things. So he says that for the animals, their economic necessities are fulfilled under nasty and unpleasant conditions. Nasty and unpleasant conditions means that, say, we sit down to, after this, today's Ekadashi, but after this class we may sit down to take prasad. And we are taking prasad and suddenly we say we are tasting some nice food. We close our eyes and we are savoring the food. And then we put our hand forward, the plate has disappeared. Hey, what happened? Or, that's bad enough. But imagine we are sitting down and eating food and suddenly, nicely savoring that food, and suddenly we feel a rope, like a lasso falls on us and it lifts us away. Hey, what is going on? I was eating my food. So, in the animal kingdom, it's like that. If, say, a mosquito comes and bites us, the mosquito is actually simply enjoying its food. For our blood just happens to be the food that it is having. It's eating that food. And then, suddenly, they're just nicely drinking that blood, and then they may suddenly find themselves flown away. That person who just blows them away. Hey, what happened? Where did my food go? And actually, they'll be blown away if that person is kind-hearted. Otherwise, that person will just beat the mosquito to death. So the struggle for existence at the physical level in the animal world is brutal. And to some extent, at the human level, when we live in a civilized society, the struggle is there, but it is not so brutal, not so grossly physical. Of course, despite our veneer of civilization, there are times when brutality breaks out, when wars break out, when people get driven by ideologies. You must kill thousands of people. If humans become brutal, then they can actually become more brutal than animals also. Because they then use their ideologies and their technologies to justify, to rationalize huge amounts of killing. But in general, if you look at history, there are times of huge turbulence and there are times of relative peace. But even in that relative peace, at any moment, a turbulence may come up. So for Gajendra, it was just enjoying life, and next moment, it was a disaster. I was talking about those bomb blasts in India that happened. Once there was one, like a 5-star hotel in India. This is the Hotel Taj. And people were sitting and just enjoying in that hotel, and suddenly some terrorists came and started shooting in the hotel itself. So what is supposed to be an enjoyable excursion suddenly seems to turn out to be disastrous. So that's what happened to Gajendra, and he just couldn't deal with it. He was fighting. And he saw that nobody could help him. None of his family members, none of the members of his herd, they could come to help him. Now, was it that they couldn't help? It is that they all saw this crocodile is so powerful, and the crocodile held them so powerfully that they didn't want to risk their life. And then he realized that I am all alone. I'm completely alone. He thought that I had these. The Bhagavad Gita talks about how the people who are ungodly, they think that Adhyo abhijanvan asmi konyo sisadrusho maya. He says, I am aristocratic. I am surrounded by aristocratic people. And who is there like me? So we could say that Gajendra had that mentality. I am so powerful. I have such powerful allies with me. But at the moment of crisis, just nobody could help. This is something which is quite sobering to think about. At the same time, it has to be carefully understood. That Prabhupada says at one level that everybody has to suffer their own karma. And nobody can interfere with anyone's karma. In fact, in the Ramayana, when Bharat is desperately proposing to Ram, begging Ram, please come back to the kingdom. So then at that time, one reason. He has to give various reasons. He says, even Kaikai, he says, she wanted you to go, but she is here now. She wants you. She, because of her word only, Dasharath, our father, told us that you should go to the forest. But she doesn't, she wants you to come back. He says, no, my father gave me the word, I have to follow. Then one argument Bharat uses over there is, he says, actually, if you see, it was because of me, because of my mother's desire to have me as the king. That is why you had to go to the forest. So all that has happened is my fault. So therefore, if you want to, if Dashrath Maharaj, if our father's word is to be honored, so let's do this. I will stay in the kingdom for 14 years. I will stay in the forest for 14 years and you go back to the kingdom. So the word will be honored, but justice will also be done. So Ram is amazed at one level to see the selflessness of Bharat. But then he says that no, we cannot arbitrarily exchange karma like this. He said, the laws of karma act in their own way and they are the basis of the universal order. The universe would be thrown into disorder if people started whimsically giving up their karma to others or taking up others' karma. At one level, when we form any relationship with anyone, especially a close relationship, their karma gets intertwined with our karma. Say if we form a relationship with someone and they happen to be very sick, they fall sick repeatedly, then that inconveniences us also. Not just inconveniences, that casts a negative pall on the whole relationship. But they are suffering and then those who are connected with them also suffering. And it's our dharma to help our loved ones as much as we can. So the Bhagavatam is not talking, the Bhagavatam's thrust is on talking from the ultimate perspective. The Pandavas never tell Draupadi that your dishonor was your own karma. No, it's your karma, we won't interfere with your karma, you suffer your karma. No, the Bhagavatam at one level, the Mahabharata at one level illustrates that at that particular point when she was being dishonored, nobody could help her. And she had to take shelter of Krishna alone. However, after that, the Pandavas did fight. They fought against the Kauravas. And one reason was for that was the Kauravas had gone too far in terms of dishonoring Draupadi. So at one level, we have to do there is the consideration of karma, and everybody has to go through their karma, but there is also the consideration of dharma. Dharma means all of us have our duty. So we have to do our dharma. When Maharaj Pruthu's citizens come to him and tell him that, oh, nobody has any food to eat, we're all starving. So he doesn't tell them, oh, all of you are suffering your own karma, continue suffering. Just tolerate it. No. He considers, what is my dharma? I am a king. And as a king, I have to provide the necessities to my citizens. So if we get too much into the analysis of karma itself, this is this person's karma, that is that person's karma, they're suffering their karma, then we can come off as extremely insensitive. If we start attributing karma to every situation, then where will we stop? Now, if a mother has a newborn baby and that newborn baby is crying, should the mother think, oh, the baby is crying because of her own karma? Obviously not. The mother has to take care of the child. So we don't focus only on karma. Oh, people are suffering their own karma, let them suffer. We focus on what is our dharma. What is our duty? And if it is our dharma to help, we should help. And of course, our ultimate dharma is to help people by taking them beyond karma, by giving them Krishna. But there are times when by our karma we are put in such a situation that we just don't get any help from anyone. And for us to have any stable relationships, it has to be for the stable relationships to be had, we ourselves need to be stable. And one aspect of being stable means to understand that we are all existentially alone. We are all existential. At a fundamental level of existence, we come into this world alone and we will leave this world alone. Once we accept that I am alone. Now, of course, at a spiritual level, Krishna is with us always. Sarvasya chaham vriddhi sannivishto. I'm talking about relating with others. Once we accept that I'm existentially alone, then we can choose to form relationships with others which can be fulfilling, in which we can help each other. So in relationships we can have dependence, independence and interdependence. So dependence means our whole existence becomes based on someone else. There can be different kinds of addictions. Some are substance addictions. Some are behavior. I mean, people are addicted to alcohol or smoking or whatever. There may be behavioral addictions. Some people may just surfing on the net compulsively, clicking some buttons. Behavioral addiction can be there. There can also be, we could say, emotional addiction, where some people, for example, have an approval addiction. Approval addiction means they just want to earn the approval of someone. And their whole life is oriented, how can I get the approval of this person? So maybe in our childhood we might have had some parent who compared us with our sibling. He's so clever, he gets such good marks in his exam. Why don't you get good marks? And then our whole life at a subconscious level is driven by, okay, how can I earn the approval of that person? So now, yes, we want to have pleasing relationship with others, and so at times we can do things which others will approve. But we can't orient our whole life around gaining the approval of someone. Here I'm not talking about spiritual relationships directly. I'm talking about our normal relationships. So we could say at a broad level, Karna had this approval addiction from Duryodhana. Because he always had that insecurity that that I'm not recognized as a Kshatriya. And it was Duryodhana who recognized him as a Kshatriya. So he was hooked on that Duryodhana should approve. And that's how he actually gave up his own morality, his own principles. And it was he who suggested that Draupadi be disrobed in the assembly. And later on he regrets. He said, in my desire to please Duryodhana, I did some terrible things. He tells this to Krishna, he tells it to Bhishma also. There is no report in the Mahabharata of Duryodhana ever regretting anything. He is just so insolent. In fact, he says, when Krishna comes as the Shanti Dut and everybody is telling him, give up your obstinacy, he says, after great introspection, I don't see anything wrong that I did. And he says, I have simply acted according to my nature. If at all any blame is to be given, don't blame me. Blame the creator who gave me this nature. So it's like, that's saying, if we start blaming our nature for our things, it's like saying, if a plane crashes and there's a disastrous accident, and then you ask, why did the plane crash? Oh, because of the law of gravity. Now that is no explanation. The law of gravity is there for everyone. For all planes it is there. So it is a factor, but it is not the key factor. If a ship sinks or a plane crashes, gravity is not the explanation for that. So all of us have our conditionings, and we have to work with our conditionings. Just blaming our conditionings for our misbehavior is like blaming gravity for falling. So the whole art of driving a ship or driving a plane is that in spite of gravity, you learn to drive the plane or drive the car. Similarly, we all have our conditionings. And the whole art of living is that despite our conditionings, how do we move forward to live in a principled way? So some planes may be able to fly very fast, some planes may fly very slowly. Or some vehicles may fly very slowly. But they all have to fly. So for Duryodhana to blame his conditionings is just washing off responsibility from his hands. So Karna did recognize. So Karna did acknowledge that I made a mistake. So we could say that Karna suffered from approval addiction. And we may not be so physically dependent on others, but we may become very emotionally dependent on others. That means the other person just gets a little displeased with us, speaks one rough word to us, and then some people, one rough word, that will shake them up for weeks together. How could he have spoken like this to me? And what is going to happen to me? So we have to recognize that each one of us is alone. So here I am talking about somebody with whom we are in a close relationship, but they neglect us or they hurt us in some way. Then what to speak of somebody who is opposed to us entirely? They're just on a... in the animal kingdom, we may have some... there are some animals, they're natural predators, the natural enemies. A lion will chase a deer. Now, for us, there may be no naturally people who are enemies. But there are enemies like that. So sometimes there is enmity between countries. Say India and Pakistan has a severe enmity. China and Japan has enmity. There's some countries, Iran and Saudi Arabia has enmity. Circumstantially, there may be huge enmity between some countries. So then one country, it would like nothing better than to just have the other country destroyed. At that time, what do we do? See, Gajendra, he tried his best in his situation to fight off this crocodile, but it just didn't work. And similarly for us, we find that some situation, some person behind the situation, just creating so much trouble for us. We're just not able to get over it. So at that time, it was that Gajendra's memory from his past life came to him. Jajapa paramam japyam prak janmani anushikshitam. What he had remembered in his previous life came to him in this life. What that means is that for him, he remembered not specifically. Was it that the same verses that he has chanted in the 8th canto, those were the verses which he had chanted in the previous life? Not necessarily. Because he is also speaking verses such as, he says that, I've got a body in ignorance right now. Because this is Mooda Janmani. This is a ignorant animal body, and please release me from it. So obviously in the previous life he did not have an animal body. So what he remembered was not exactly necessarily the letters of the same mantra. He was not chanting actually mantra, he started various prayers. So what was remembered was that there is a higher being whom I can take shelter of. And then he not only offered prayers, but he also took with his trunk, he offered a flower to the Lord. And he called out to the Lord, who is transcendental to all of existence. And he sought help from that Lord. And in response, the Lord appeared over there. He appeared and he, with his Sudarshan Chakra, just cut off the head of that crocodile. So, when the crocodile's head was cut off, Gajendra was liberated. He was freed from that immense danger threatened his life. But before that itself, something very significant happened. When Gajendra starts offering his prayers, he's threatened, he's alarmed, fearful that he may lose his life. Initially his prayer starts off as a prayer for protection of his life. But as he's praying, as the devotional knowledge and the devotional emotions start manifesting in his consciousness from the previous life, as they start manifesting, then his consciousness starts becoming more and more clear. It starts expanding. When the problem is there, our consciousness gets caught in the problem and we feel this problem has to be solved. But if somehow, even because of that problem, we start practicing bhakti, we start connecting our consciousness with Krishna, that connection with Krishna expands our consciousness. And as our consciousness starts expanding, we start realizing there's a bigger reality. And then Gajendra's prayer towards the end is very amazing. Kalena nahiyasya viplava ajnana. He says that, oh Lord, please destroy that which is not destroyed by time. What is that? Ignorance. He says, my ignorance will not be destroyed by time alone. Please destroy that. Normally, everything in this world, as it grows old, is destroyed by time. The best buildings, the best clothes, the best bodies, all of them will be deteriorated, destroyed by time. He says that his mood is, okay, this body which I have, I was praying to protect this body, but while praying to protect this body is sooner or later going to die. what is the point of protecting this? He says, my real problem is not this crocodile which is catching me. My real problem is ignorance has caught me. And please, O Lord, help me overcome that ignorance. Let me get beyond that. And when the Lord delivers Gajendra, it is not just that he is delivered from the crocodile. He delivered from the crocodile of material existence itself. So I'll conclude with one point here, maybe a little detailed, but this point is that sometimes it is that we think that problems come in on our way to Krishna. And it is true. Sometimes problems come in our way to Krishna, but sometimes problems show us the way to Krishna. Or sometimes problems themselves become the way to Krishna. What that means is, we think this is the path I'm going to follow towards Krishna. I want to do this service, I want to attain, I want to do this, I want to have this financial security, I want to have this relationship, I want to have this situation, I want to have this facility. And then I can practice bhakti peacefully. So when something doesn't work according to our plan, then we feel the problem is coming in my way to Krishna. And at one level, it is true. But at another level, we have to understand that the way to Krishna is not limited to one. There are many different ways in which we may go towards Krishna. And sometimes the problem may itself be a way that takes us towards Krishna even more intensely. Because that problem may force us to take shelter of Krishna much more intensely than what we would have done otherwise. So the way to Krishna is not just by getting things done for the service of Krishna. The way to Krishna is also by getting Krishna into our heart. And sometimes getting things done for Krishna may actually keep those things in our heart, not Krishna in our heart. That means, I have to do this book distribution, I have to build this temple, I have to do this program. Now, all that is very good. But it's important that we do these services for Krishna, but sometimes the very services that we are doing for Krishna, they may increase our sense of doership. I am the doer. And I have done this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this also. And then we are doing it for Krishna, so definitely we are going to grow spiritually by that. But that sense of doership may actually keep us a distance from Krishna, even while we are decreasing the distance for others for Krishna. If I think I am such a great speaker, I am such a great kirtanier, then it may be that I may be having that sense of doership, and by that sense of doership, I may still stay alienated from Krishna. But somebody who hears the kirtan, hears the class, they feel, they may go closer to Krishna also. So the bhakti is not just about doing things, but it's also about going beyond the doership of things, being the doer. So there are both aspects. We want to do things for Krishna, and we also want to realize that we are not the doers. So that's when I say, we may think that if we consider doing things is the way to go to Krishna, then we feel this problem is coming in the way of going towards Krishna. But if we think going towards Krishna means giving up my doership, sense of doership, that karta ahamiti manyate, then often the problem is the way to give up that sense of doership. And that sometimes is more important for our spiritual growth than doing things for Krishna. Giving up that sense of doership. So one cry in humility to Krishna may actually take us more towards Krishna than 1,000 steps taken in pride. So that's why, now this is in no way to minimize the importance of doing things for Krishna. We do have to do all that we can in our service to Krishna. But we shouldn't think that the way to Krishna is limited to only doing things. At that time, so sometimes we may want to do a particular service. And this theme I'll talk about more in tomorrow's session, about how sometimes while doing something good for Krishna, or good in general, we face opposition. It's like Prahlad Maharaj faced opposition. So how do we deal with that? But the theme which I would like to focus here is that sometimes doing things, if we reduce the path to Krishna to that only, I have to do this. If I do this, I'm successful. If I don't do this, I'm unsuccessful. Then we may just be totally frustrated. But if we see that that growing towards Krishna is not just about doing things for Krishna, but also changing our consciousness so that we understand that I am not the sole doer. Now, of course, when we say we give up doership, giving up doership is not giving up doing. Those are two very different things. We are also doers, but we are not the sole doers. Tatraivam sati kartaram atmanam kevalam tuyah pashyatya akruta buddhitvan nasa pashyati durmatihi. In 18.16 the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that atmanam kevalam tuyah. When we think that we are the sole doers, that is the illusion. So we do have to do. I was once giving a class about this verse Prakrite Kriyamanani 3.27, that to think that I am the doer is an illusion. The modes are doing everything. So I asked that this question, hearing this verse may raise many questions in our mind. So what are the questions that come? So I was expecting, how can I not be the doer? If I don't do things don't happen. If I don't cook food, there will be no food at my home. I was expecting that kind of question. How do we practically understand that we are not the doers? But one devotee who was known to be expert at evading responsibility, that devotee, he raised his hand. He said, yes. So what question does this? He says, if I am not the doer, why should I do anything? So actually, it's not that we are not the doers, it's that we are not the sole doers. Like in the previous session, I talked about this karma, daiva, kala leading to phala. So with respect to karma, we are the doers. But for the coming of phala, the karma alone is not enough. The daiva and the kala also play their roles. So to recognize that we are not the sole doers, that is knowledge. And when somebody is opposing us bitterly in the practice of in whatever we are trying to do, at that time, we have to focus not on the wrongdoer, but focus on the ultimate doer. That we don't let our world get reduced to this person. Why is this person doing like this? If only this person changed their behavior, my life would be so much nicer. Yes, at one level it is true that some people might just be, see, all of us in our lives, our actions give some pleasure to others, our actions give some trouble to others. So all of us, in a sense, are instruments of each other's karma. So when we get some trouble from someone, we understand that that person is actually that instrument of my karma. But if we consider, there are, in medicine also there might be some injections, just put a small pinprick. But there might be something which is like some instrument which gives a whole electric shock that goes through the whole body. So some people for us are like concentrated instruments of karma. So so some people, we are just going along the road, and for no reason somebody starts yelling at us. Somebody cuts across our road. I didn't do anything. Why did this person do this? That person is an instrument of a minor karma for us. But some people may be instruments of major karma. So what happens? They just keep being present in our life as a problem again and again and again. And then it becomes very, very difficult to deal with that. Now from the perspective of karma alone, if we see, then we can invert our normal perspective. It is said that if we see from the perspective of karma, when we are happy, we should be unhappy. And when we are unhappy, we should be happy. What does that mean? It means that when we are happy, that simply means our past good karma is getting exhausted. And when that karma will get completely exhausted, then we are going to get trouble. So when we are happy, we should be unhappy. Oh, my good karma is getting exhausted. And when we are unhappy, we should be happy. Oh, I'm unhappy, that means my bad karma is getting exhausted now. So this is simply from a karma perspective. We could see from that perspective, we can invert our normal way of looking at things. But, as I said, we don't look always only from the karma perspective. We also look from the dharma perspective. Dharma perspective is, what is my dharma? What is my duty? And if we, so I said, focus not on the wrongdoer, focus on the ultimate doer. What that means is that we don't let the other person alone determine our actions. You did like this, so I'll do like this. You're doing like that, so I'll do like that. We keep our vision fixed on the ultimate doer, Krishna. How can I serve Krishna in this situation? In this situation, when, okay, this person is creating so much trouble for me, what can I do? So, we may sometimes serve with others. That means they do some service, we do some service, we serve with them. Sometimes we serve under others. They give us instructions. And then we just follow those instructions. Sometimes we serve others. Now, serve under others means that whatever they tell we do, but we serve others means we are inspired by them, and we have some relationship with them where we are obliged and we serve others. And sometimes we serve in spite of others. So there are various permutations in how our relationship with another person will relate with our relationship with Krishna. Sometimes we serve Krishna with others. Sometimes we serve Krishna under others. Sometimes we serve that other person so that we serve Krishna, because we see them as representatives of Krishna directly in our lives. Sometimes we serve in spite of others. So now in all these situations, depending on how that person is acting, we may have to reciprocate appropriately. We can't just have one standard way of acting towards everyone, because we have to see their disposition also. The Bhagavad Gita says that Adveshta Sarva Bhutanam Maitra Karuna Evacha, that the pure devotee is the well-wisher of all living beings. But that doesn't mean that the pure devotee treats all living, in a functional sense, a pure devotee will treat all living beings equally. If there's a cat which has come into our room or come too close to us, we may clap, and that because of that clap, the cat will go away. But if there's another member from that same phylum, there's a lion over there or a tiger over there, if we clap, we will go away. So although in principle we understand that there are the cat and the lion are both or the tiger, both of them are souls. But the body in which they are, that changes the way we respond to them. So similarly, some people may be very inimical to us, and then we may have to respond appropriately to them. So some people may be very hostile to us, and then we have to sometimes take counteraction towards them. But we don't reduce our consciousness to that person. In the Bhagavad Gita 11.33, Krishna tells Arjuna that Mayaiva ite nihatah purvameva nimitta matram bhavasavisachi. He says that by my arrangement, your enemies are already killed. Just rise and fight as my instrument. But then, so here Krishna uses the word enemies. They are your enemies, fight against them. They are killed already by my arrangement. But 22 verses later in the same chapter, 11.55, Krishna says, Mat karmakrun mat paramo mat bhaktah sangavarjitah nirvairah sarva bhuteshu yah samameti pandava. He says, nirvairah sarva bhuteshu. One who is not inimical towards any living being. That person will come to me. So how can, they're calling them their enemies, but then they don't be inimical to anyone. How the two go together? It says that we see that functionally, in this situation, this person is acting like my enemy. So I have to take the needful action. The Pandavas did not fight the Kurukshetra war to take revenge against the Kauravas. They fought to establish dharma. They fought to do their dharma as Kshatriyas, to remove those who were disrupting dharma. If their purpose was simply to take revenge against the Kauravas, then they would have never even considered a peace proposal. So they were ready to put that behind. But when the Kauravas had no interest in any kind of reconciliation, then war became inevitable. So sometimes for our service to Krishna, or for our doing our dharma, materially or spiritually, we may have to, some people may be troubling us, and we may have to fight against But we don't fight against them primarily. We fight for what is important for us. And if that person is coming in the way of us, then we may fight against them. But that is not our primary thrust of our consciousness. I'm not fighting against this person. I'm fighting for this cause. I'm fighting for this service. I'm fighting for this. And circumstantially, this person is opposing, so let me do that. I may have to fight against them. I won't go into this part, but while fighting against others or while dealing with others, I had talked about this elaborately in my last visit, that when we face an unpalatable situation, we have three broad options to us. Tolerate, does anyone remember the last one? Tolerate, mitigate, or immigrate. So, emigrate. So, if it's very cold, then I may decide, okay, this is my job, this is where my job is, my family, I have to stay here. So, tolerate it. Just live with it. Did I speak this last time or I did not?
No, you did not.
Oh, really? Okay. Then I will speak this in tomorrow's session. I won't go elaborately right now because we can have some time for question answers. But I'll just mention, tolerate means we just accept the situation and live with it. Mitigate means we counter the situation. And immigrate means we just exit from the situation. We feel, I don't want to get involved in this. I'll move somewhere else. So I will discuss more about these three ways in which when we face an unpalatable situation, how do we deal with it? And the key thing is that we don't let any problem or any problem person shrink our consciousness to them. So Gajendra's consciousness was initially shrunk to the crocodile. Now, this crocodile is my enemy. I have to get rid of it somehow. And it was for getting rid of that crocodile that he prayed to Krishna. But as he was praying to Krishna, his consciousness expanded. And he said, Krishna, I'm praying to you so that I can attain you, not just to get rid of this crocodile. So similarly for us, when we face a problem, our consciousness may shrink to that problem or that problem person. That's natural. And that may be our impetus for practicing bhakti. But as we practice bhakti, we let our consciousness expand. We don't make our bhakti conditional to the solution, to the solving of that problem. So there is actually a bigger issue over here. And Krishna, please help me to deal with that bigger issue. Ultimately, I'm disconnected from you. Let me come towards you. And if we take shelter of Krishna that way, then that problem, which seems to be, that problem person who seems to be such a big troublemaker for us, actually they may become the impetus for intensifying our bhakti. See, on our spiritual journey, we can have different kinds of people who help us. Some people may lead us by our hand and they make us come towards Krishna. But some people may kick us from behind. Now, leading by the hand and kicking from behind, there are very different actions in this specific interaction. But if the end result is that we go closer to Krishna, then that is wonderful. Being kicked by anyone is not at all pleasant. But if by kicking we are made to go closer towards Krishna, then instead of turning back and trying to kick them back and spend all our energy in that, see, okay, this is actually meant to take me towards Krishna. And that way, we can see even those people as ultimately helping us in our spiritual growth. But how do we, if at all, to continue this point only, which we are doing next time. So while we are being kicked, how to deal with the kicks. That we'll discuss in the next session. So I'll summarize what I spoke today. I spoke on this theme of how when we are practicing bhakti, we may face problems because of some people who are on a mission against us. I started by talking about how the Bhagavatam is throughout talking about death. And for Dhruva it is dishonor, which is worse than death in some ways. And it talks about how through different ways externally, but internally, the devotees took shelter of Krishna amidst death-like situations. And specifically with respect to Gajendra, spent a lot of time discussing about how did Gajendra remember to pray to Krishna when he was in an animal body, an elephant's body. They talked about that what differentiates humans from animals is the capacity to ask the why question. Why am I doing so? Why am I living? Why am I eating? Not just how question, how can I eat? So, for the soul in the animal body, the consciousness is very tied to the body. In the humans, it is a little less tied. And that's why we can think of bigger things. This tying of consciousness means it limits our consciousness. So, Often when problems come in our life, our consciousness gets shrunk to that problem. Basically, it's to the thing that we are attached to and that is threatened by that problem. So if you are too attached, we may hear about a bomb blast in a particular place, but you think not about the people who are dead, but you're thinking about, say, some sports match that is cancelled because of that. So attachments they become like covers on our consciousness, which reduce our consciousness to tunnel vision. So at one level, getting the thing done is what we are concerned about at that time. But Krishna has a bigger purpose of expanding our consciousness also. So in the Gajendra's case, his consciousness had shrunk to the level of his being a king and enjoying his lordship over the community of elephants, the herd of elephants. So when we move from one life to another, it is the attraction towards Krishna that is carried on. Specific recollections may be carried on, but specific recollections don't necessarily lead to a transformation in intention. Children who remember their past lives, they still go on with their normal life in a more or less materialistic way only. So it's for some people, that past life's practice of spirituality may manifest early in this life itself. Like for Gajendra from the beginning, for Bharat Muni as a deer, Bharat Maharaj as a deer, he was very spiritual right from the beginning. But for some people, it may take a particular situation. So if somebody is born in a devoted family, and if they were devoted previously, then previous life's momentum and this life's momentum works together. But if they are born in a materialistic situation, then this life's momentum can work against previous life's momentum. And it's when that materialistic situation is challenged, threatened, then this life's momentum stops acting. And that's when the previous life's momentum of spirituality bursts forth. So for Gajendra, when he faced this crocodile suddenly biting him, he thought, I can just easily kick it off. Similarly, we face conditionings or conditions which we feel, I can just easily give them up. But then they just hold on to us. We seem to be released temporarily, but again they catch us. And when scriptures give us huge figures, the point is not the specificity of the number of figures, the point is the principle that is to be illustrated. The principle is that, say in Chitraketu's case, he tried so much to have a child. In Gajendra's case, he was so prosperous, so the big mountain, he was the lord of that. And he was so powerful, he fought for so long. But still, he became helpless. And when we are put in a situation where we just can't do anything, that I talked about how in the animal kingdom there is much more, our needs are fulfilled in very nasty and unpleasant conditions. There's a direct threat to life at every moment practically. In human beings, in civilized societies, there might not be that much of a physical threat, but because of our ideologies and technologies, if people become brutal, and the brutality can far exceed what happens in the animal kingdom. And when Gajendra was caught in the situation, he remembered from his past and he took shelter of the Lord. Not in terms of remembering the specific verses, but praying. And for us, sometimes we feel problems come in our way to Krishna, but problems may be the way to Krishna. Problems come in the way of our doing things for Krishna, but going closer to Krishna requires not just doing things, but also giving up doership. And that giving up doership doesn't mean that we don't do anything. It means that we recognize that I am not the sole doer. And I concluded the last part by explaining how when Gajendra prayed, then his consciousness expanded from the specific crocodile to his overall predicament in material existence. Similarly for us, when we take shelter of Krishna amidst problems, rather than letting our consciousness stay constricted, this problem has to be solved, Krishna, why are you not solving it? But we expand our consciousness to take shelter of Krishna beyond that particular problem. And how to deal with the particular problem? I discussed about tolerate, mitigate, integrate. I mentioned that, which I'll discuss in tomorrow's class. Some people may lead us to Krishna lovingly by the hand. Some people may, by their harshness, they may kick us towards Krishna. So if we focus not on the wrongdoer, but on the ultimate doer, then we'll find out how best to respond in that particular situation. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your lecture. They're always very informing. Prabhuji, I have a question. It comprises of 3 smaller questions, but you might have one answer for it. You mentioned about 2 terms, conditioning and consciousness. Are they correlated or are they mutually exclusive? And what degree of control do we have on each of them? Also, in my understanding, conditioning answers the how of human beings, like how do I earn so much money? But consciousness drives the why do I need to earn so much money? And also when we are speaking about the 3 modes of material nature, is that the consciousness or the conditioning?
Okay. A thoughtful question. So, how are our conditionings and consciousness related? Do the conditionings determine the how question and the consciousness the why question? And the 3 modes of material nature, what do they affect? The conditionings or the consciousness? Our conditionings filter our consciousness. So the word consciousness can mean different things. But if we consider consciousness to be the energy of the soul, so if you consider flashlight, the flashlight is giving a beam of light. So like that, the soul is here in the region of the hearts, and from there, the soul's consciousness coming out towards the body, to the physical world externally. So now, if in front of the flashlight, there is a particular colored light, say the flashlight is white, but there's a yellow film on it, then yellow layer will make the light that emerges as yellow. So we could say, the soul is the source of consciousness, whereas our conditionings are situated in the mind and the body. By the word the mind, I'm using that as a shorthand for referring to the whole subtle body. So mind, intelligence, ego, we can refer to them for convenience as the mind. So basically in our mind and our body, the conditionings are situated. And those conditionings shape the expression of the consciousness. That's why at one level, the Bhagavad Gita is very clear that consciousness comes from the soul. Avinashi tu tadviddi yena sarvamidam tatam. 2.7 Krishna says. But then in 13.6 and 7, when he's talking about Sankhya, there also he says that Ichchadvesh sukham dukkham sanghatas chetna dhruti etat kshetram samasena savikara mudharutam. He says that Ichchadvesh sukha dukkha. Attachment, desire, aversion, happiness, pain, pleasure, consciousness. All these are transformations of kshetra. Kshetra is our body-mind complex. That's the area where the soul is situated right now. So consciousness, it comes from the soul. But its expression right now is determined by the body-mind. That's why, say, all over the world, people eat food. But when, say, people ask, what is your favorite snack? Or, when a Punjabi sees a paratha, their mouth may start watering. A South Indian, when they see idli sambar or dosa, their mouth may start watering. For somebody else, it might be a pizza. So the hunger is a need that is universal. But the specific desire that is triggered, that depends on the particular conditioning that is there. So consciousness comes from the soul, and it is filtered by the conditioning present in the body-mind. And how much is the freedom that we have? We can't immediately get rid of our conditionings. They are there. But our basic life, we do 2 things. We work on our conditionings, and we work with our conditionings. So work on our conditionings means we try to decrease the influence of the conditionings on us. That is, we purify ourselves by the practice of bhakti. That is focused on purification and spiritualization. But while that is happening, we work with our conditionings. In fact, we could say the whole system of Varnashram is meant work with our conditioning. A Brahmana has Brahmanical conditioning, a Vaishya has Vaishya conditioning. So all of us have our conditionings. And the point of Varnashram is not so much to divide people into categories, specific categories. The point is that to engage people in a way that is harmonious with their current situation. So the word conditioning is generally used with a negative connotation. We may use the word nature with a more objective or positive connotation. That this is just my nature. Now, it depends on what kind of conditioning is. If somebody starts saying that when I get angry, I just slap people around me, that's my conditioning. Well, that is not an acceptable conditioning. We have to, civilized behavior requires that we all restrain our impulses to some extent. Having said that, it also implies that if some people are of a particular nature, they will work that way. Some people are Kshatriya nature, they want to lead, they want to delegate, they want to get things done in a big way. That's what their nature, that's all. If they are told just sit and study Shastra, they can't do that so well. So we have to work with our conditionings. So our freedom is that we don't work for our conditionings. Our focus is not working for our conditionings, nor is it working against our conditionings. Our focusing is working for Krishna with our conditionings. And while we are working with our conditionings, Krishna, that connection with Krishna will purify us also. As far as specific questions or modes of thought, it say that it is the consciousness only which asks all questions. Mm-hmm. That if there is no consciousness, there is no question to be asked. Mm-hmm. So in my talks on science and spirituality in universities, I say that science cannot prove that you exist. But science can prove only because you exist. Science cannot prove that a scientist exists. Scientist as a locus of consciousness, as a source, as a conscious agent. A scientific method, there is no such thing as one unit of awareness. So what is the point I'm making through this is that consciousness is the basis of everything that we do. So whether it is the how question or the why question, both can be asked only because there is consciousness. If a cat is unconscious, even a mouse is going by, the cat won't, okay, how can I catch this rat? It can't catch this mouse. It can't think like that. But our conditioning will determine which questions we are more likely to ask. So if somebody has spiritual impressions from their previous lives, then they are more likely to ask the why question. If somebody has more materialistic impressions from their past or present life, they are more likely to just ask the how question more and more. And by our free will, if we keep practicing bhakti steadily, then we can both do some constructive contribution while working with our conditionings, and gradually we work on our conditionings, their influence on us also goes down. Some conditionings, they are meant to be overcome. So the conditioning with respect to lust, anger, greed, envy, they are meant to be overcome. But so we could say there are two distinct kinds of conditionings. There's a conditioning which are related with anarthas, which we can call as vasanas, lust, anger, greed, all those. But there are conditionings which are related with our psychophysical nature, so swabhava, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. They don't necessarily have to be given up. So Krishna says, when he says, just work according to your nature, Shreyan Sadharmo Viguna Paradharva Samashritat. He's talking about working according to our psychophysical nature. But then he also says that we have to restrain our senses. Samstabhyatman jahi shatrum mahabaho kama rupam durasadam. So the conditionings which are related to lust, anger, greed, envy, they have to be, we have to work on them and restrain them. If we confuse this, then it becomes a problem. So Krishna doesn't tell Duryodhana to stop being a Kshatriya. But Krishna tells, don't be so greedy as a Kshatriya. Give the Kauravas their share of the kingdom. So some people, there's one Bhagavad Gita teacher, he's a so-called spiritual teacher who wrote a book on the Bhagavad Gita. He says, the whole world has missed the point of the Bhagavad Gita. And for him, he says, the essence of Bhagavad Gita is one verse. And not only one verse, one line of one verse. Nigraha kim karishyasi. What can repression accomplish? He says, this is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And he was a propagator of this idea, Sambhog se Samadhi. Have sense gratification and then you will go towards spiritual realization. He says, actually, and he has this whole idea. He says, Krishna demonstrated this with the gopis, so we also have to follow in his footsteps. It's crazy. What about Krishna telling in the Bhagavad Gita that we have to restrain ourselves? So many places he tells us that also. So there is, when Duryodhana is saying, this is my creator has given me this nature. Where he is wrong is that yes, he's a Kshatriya, he's a warrior, he has to be a king. Nobody's telling him to give it up. But we have to act according to our nature also within the limits of dharma. I might be a Kshatriya wants power, but the Kshatriya has to seek power by dharmic means, not go against dharma. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yes, Mataji.
Thank you so much for the wonderful class, as always. If you can just help me understand, like today you mentioned that animals are more focused on the how, and as human beings we have the capacity to ask the why kind of questions. And then on Wednesday you had also said that the why channel can be a blocking channel.
If
you
good
keep
question.
on asking.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
then, so,
right, I understand.
Yeah, so how
I mentioned in the previous class that asking the why question can block us. We just shift to the how question. So, when something has happened to us, a bad thing has happened, why is this happening? Why is this happening? If we keep asking that, we'll get blocked. Yeah, it's a very good question. I think I need to clarify a little bit more. The why question and the how question, when I was talking about, the arena of questioning is very different. Here, when I said the why question can just block our consciousness, I'm talking about when things happen to us and we are not able to make sense of them. Whereas when I'm talking about the why and how question, we are not talking about what is happening to us, but what we are doing. When I am doing something, how am I doing it and why am I doing it? When we interact in the world, there are some things in our control and there are some things not in our control. So, the things that are not in our control, asking the why question too much. We definitely need to ask, because if we can make sense of things, we can respond better. But sometimes we just can't make sense of things. So at that time, focusing on the how question helps us to deal with the situation. But with respect to the things in our control, we definitely need to ask not just the how question, but also the why question. So, how am I doing my job? Okay, that's important. But why am I doing my job? How am I doing? If we just keep asking the how question, then we won't be able to pursue any spiritual purpose. So with respect to things beyond our control, it's more of dependence on Krishna. Krishna, how can I serve you now? Dependence is always there, but how do I deal with the situation now? But when there are things in our control, at that time we have to determine the direction. And when determining that direction, we have to focus on, okay, if I'm choosing this direction, not just how I can drive in this direction, but how do I drive, or why am I driving in this direction? Another example to make this clear. Say if somebody is going to drive from here cross country to New York. So now at that time, if a storm comes along the way, now we may ask, why has this storm come? Well, okay, there might be somebody say climate change, somebody say the weather here it's like that only, whatever. At that time, what is important is, okay, how do I find shelter now? Do I keep driving and the storm will go away, or do I look for some place to stay? How? So the storm is not in our control. But suppose if I am deciding to drive to New York, then I might have to say, how do I drive? Do I take this car, or do I need to hire some other car which can sustain that long drive? All these are hows. But if I am going there to meet a friend, and if it happens that friend is not there only, then all the how will become redundant. It will become just unproductive. So the why question determines, okay, why am I going there? So in that sense, with respect to driving, the how question is important. But the why question determines where we are going, and then that helps us to determine how best to go there. But with respect to things that are not in our control, at that time the how question is the most pragmatic. Okay? Yeah. Yeah.
So you are my authority on everything karma. So I wanted to ask this question, that if a person has bad dreams, is that karma being exhausted?
Yeah. If a person has bad dreams, is that karma being exhausted? Yes. Baldev Vidyabhushan explains in the Govinda Bhashya that even in our dreams, people say that sometimes, oh, it was like a dream come true. So everything was so wonderful, everything was going so wonderfully, it is like a dream come true. But Baldev Vidyabhushan makes the point, even in our dreams, we are not the controllers. That means if you look at our dreams also, if you can remember some of the dreams, oh, this person did like this person did like that. In some dreams, we are simply the observers. Some dreams, we are participators. But it's not that even in dreams, everything happens according to our will. It doesn't work like that. So he says that just as the same Ishvara creates the physical world through which we get the reactions to our major karmas. Similarly, that Ishvara creates the dream world through which we get reactions to our minor karmas. So if somebody is getting bad dreams, yes, it's a result of some bad karma which is coming off at that time. One of the names of Vishnu in the Vishnu Sahasranam also is Dushwapna Nashanam, that one who is a destroyer of bad dreams. Okay, thank you. Yes, there was a question here. Okay, yeah. Somebody here? No? Okay, yes, please.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much for the class, Prabhu. My question was more like, I feel like I exhibit two different characteristics when I'm in a Vaishnava circle, and let's say if I'm in office, like the people I interact with and the nature of the people itself is like very different. So is it okay to have such, for example, I'm not natural or I'm not open if in office I'm always like I'm always sort of in the mode of judgment and the mode of I'm affected by the politics that's happening in the office and things like that. So is it okay to have
okay, yeah.
And one more follow-up question is, how do I get over the approval of addiction? Since you mentioned the moment you mentioned it, I realized that I actually had approval of addiction in terms of like my work life. How do I get over it?
I think I'll be able to answer one question. Let's see.
Okay.
So, with respect to which question do you? I'll answer one. Which one do you want to answer first?
Second one.
Okay. How do we get over the approval addiction? We are relational creatures, and we need relationships, and naturally in the relationships, we want to be accepted and respected and appreciated by others. This is not just it is not just being egoistic. It's just a human need. When that becomes the sole basis of everything that we do, then it becomes ego-driven. That means just to get appreciation, I will do anything and everything. And if I don't get appreciation, I will do anything and everything to the other person also. Then it becomes a problem. But if you are acting dharmically, acting properly, and then wanting appreciation is just a natural human reciprocation. So we have to find out that in our social circle, who are the people who bring out the best within us? And who are the people who bring out, some people just bring out the worst within us. So in our office, for example, if you're working, naturally we need positive reviews from our colleagues or our bosses so that we continue or we rise in our job. So seeking that is just a natural functional requirement. When the solution to approval addiction is not caring about anyone else and their feelings. It is just not depending on that as our sense of self-worth and self-identity. That means if I am working in a particular situation, particular job, particular service, even in the temple, we naturally want to do it in a way that it's well done and it pleases those who are in charge. And then they appreciate us. But some different people have different natures, and some people they are quite generous in their appreciation. As for them, their appreciation is like the rains in the rainy season. For some people, habitually, their appreciation is like rain in summer. It practically never comes. You may do 100 good things and they may just harp on one thing which we did not do well. So we have to learn to understand people's nature and then learn that I can't. Some people, they praise so much that after some time we stop taking their praise also seriously. Isn't it? So some people, they give some positive, some negative. Some people give only negatives. So we have to find out that for us, we have some purpose, some service to do, some thing to get done, and in that, whose feedback helps us. Now, we can say that even negative feedback is helpful. Yes, but sometimes if there is an overdose of negative feedback, then that is not particularly helpful. So basically, if we have to do something, we need three things. We need enlightenment, we need encouragement, we need engagement. Enlightenment, this is wrong, this is right. Just action and the consequence. Encouragement, yes, you can do it. And engagement means, okay, how do I practically go about doing it? So if some people only give us enlightenment but no encouragement or engagement, that means, you are too sensitive. Somebody said that, okay, but what do I do about it, You tell me specifically, when did you feel I was oversensitive, then how can I'll try to work on it. So if somebody just gives very generic feedback, then it's not very helpful. I serve as one of the editors for Back to Godhead, and then we have to give feedback to people, the devotees who submit articles. So if somebody just gives a feedback, not suitable for publication, well then okay, that's a decision, but there's hardly anything to learn from it. So if you give something, okay, these are the reasons why it's not suitable, then somebody can work on it. So that's why if some people just they are of the nature, they will just tell it and they will not do. They will just give what is the knowledge, but they will not give any encouragement. Then we may have to have some other people who give us some encouragement. So wanting approval is not bad, but basing our whole sense of self-identity and self-worth on approval, that is bad. So we have to find out a group of people who are close to us, who are our well-wishers, and not just our well-wishers, but they also know how to act on those well-wishes in a way that is helpful for us. Some people are well-wishers, but their good wishes don't translate into particularly helpful actions. They may just be very scathing in their criticism, or they say, actually it's all good intentioned. Well, it is good intentioned, but this one devotee was telling me that some senior devotee was chastising him very heavily. And he's saying, actually, I am your well-wisher. I want your good only. So this devotee was telling me afterwards, I sometimes feel, I don't want your good wishes, I don't want anything to do with you now. So good wishes have to also be translated into helpful actions. So we find out those who can help us grow. And then we seek feedback from them, not from everyone. One of the easiest ways to make ourselves miserable is to try to please everyone. We have to have our own short list of people from whom we will take constructive feedback. Others we may take, but we may have to have some extent some defensive shield on while dealing with them. And ultimately, we have horizontal relationship with others, we have a vertical relationship with Krishna. And our strength and stability has to come from that vertical relationship with Krishna. Draupadi worked with her husbands as a dharmic service to Krishna. But at one particular time, even her husbands couldn't help her. So she had to serve Krishna alone, take shelter alone. So it is ultimately our vertical relationship with Krishna is our shelter. And the stronger we are in that relationship, the lesser we will be dependent on approval from others for our sense of self-worth or self-identity. We will respond in a way that we can take into consideration others' opinions also. We don't do anything which unnecessarily agitates them. But we don't go off course simply to get their approval. We focus on serving Krishna and we seek the approval of those who encourage us in our service to Krishna in a way that is encouraging to us. Okay? So thank you very much. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की, श्रील प्रभुपाद की, गौर भक्त वृंद की, गौर प्रेमानंदे. So last time I forgot to mention that we have some books here. There are of course written around 20 books which are there over there, but this is a new book, Wisdom from the Ramayana. There are 20 incidents from the Ramayana which have been analyzed from the point of view of relationships and practical issues, how misunderstandings occur between people, how sometimes one slip of tongue can lead to a lot of complications, why sometimes even good people suddenly under rush of impulses behave very badly, how when we are facing problems, when to see them as given to as accept destiny and leave it like that, or when to act to solve the problems. These kind of practical issues that we face in our life, in a philosophical perspective, using the pastimes of the Ramayana, they've been analyzed. And this book is available, Wisdom from the Ramayana. And then we have these card decks. These are 365 meditation cards based on the Bhagavad Gita. This is, the Gita's verses, I write on them at geetadaily.com, a daily article. So those article titles, some of them I have selected and then refined them further. So each of them is a quote which can serve as a standalone meditation. You can keep it on your, there is an easel inside it, and then you can put it on your on your desk, or you can give it to someone who is interested in Bhagavad Gita but doesn't have at this time the commitment to read the whole Bhagavad Gita. So then they can just look at these quotes, and there's a verse, each quote is inspired by a particular verse, so that verse number is also given. There are quotes on work-life balance, there are quotes on effective communication, there are quotes on positive attitude, on growing through adversity. So there on various practical topics, there are quotes which are classified. So you can have this card deck also, which is available here. And for those of you who prefer some talks, there are some pen drives with some talks also available. There's one pen drive which has a systematic study of the whole first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, verse by verse, about 110 classes. And then there's one pen drive which has about 250 Bhagavatam classes that I've given across the world. It's called Applied Bhakti Yoga. There's one pen drive which has around 250 classes on mind and relationships, which are what I've spoken in companies, colleges, and say congregation programs in the evenings. Then there is another pen drive which has around 2,500 question answers, the kind which we had say after this class. And there's another pen drive which has about 250 classes which I gave last year in my fall trip. So all this is available out there. If you want, you can have it. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Krishna Prabhu, how are you doing?